Hi guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com and welcome to live lesson episode number. So I wanted to let you guys know that every second Monday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be live streaming a lesson over at rockclass101.com. Now these live lessons are going to be hosted by Matt Dahlberg, and each month the topic will be different. So what's fun about the live lessons is that you're not only able to watch live, but you're also able to chat live. So you'll be able to chat with Matt and other Rock Class 101 members. So for more information on how to tune in, click this link right here or go to the site rockclass101.com and do a search for live lessons. Now on that page you'll also be able to watch every live lesson that we've done before. So if you've ever missed one, no worries, they're all there. Now, if you can't make the live stream, don't sweat it, because the day after the broadcast, we'll be publishing it to our YouTube channel. And to go one step further, on the first Monday of the month, which is 1 week before the broadcast, we're going to have a forum post up on the site, which will cover two things. Number one, what the topic for the month's live lesson will be about. And number two, you'll be able to post your questions ahead of time. So that's great news because you're still going to be able to participate. Now to post on our forum, all you have to do is sign up for basic membership, which is 100% free, and that will gain you the ability to post on our forums. All right, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Matt to teach this month's lesson, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
So today we're going to be working on the difference between practice and playing. Practice and playing are two really different concepts that people really kind of mix up a lot. And today we're going to be talking about the differences between them. We're going to be talking about why we need both of them. We're going to be talking about how you use both of them. And also we're going to talk about what your needs are with each of them, because the reality is everybody's a little bit different in that way. So let's go ahead and start with the beginning. Let's start talking about what are the differences between practice and playing. Well, basically, practice is a concentrated effort at developing and acquiring new skills, right? So when you're practicing, you're essentially 100% engaged with what you're doing and you're trying to acquire a new ability. So practice is going to be when you're developing muscle memory, when you're doing something in a very, again, concentrated way, right? Playing, on the other hand, is going to be using skills that have been acquired. And this is also called noodling, right? When people are just kind of sitting with their uke and doing whatever, that's absolutely playing. Versus when people are sitting engaged with one concept that they're trying to learn, that's going to be more practice, right? So the differences between them are that. And when we look at it, we need to think about, why do we need both of these things? And the reality is that we need both concepts because they both work very different aspects of our playing. The reality is that practice is what we do to develop these new skills. And then playing is what we do to really refine and polish them. For me, when I was learning, I was really fortunate because I was in college studying music and playing my ukulele. And my life essentially consisted of go to class, learn music, come home, practice a little bit, and then play a lot. And what I mean by that is I would spend maybe 30 minutes to an hour each day looking at some sort of tab or looking at some sort of concept that I would just be deeply engaged with, where no external things are involved. It's just, I'm learning this. And usually I would bite off something like, 4 to 8 bars of a song, and I'd sit there and practice it over and over and over, making sure I'm getting all the fingerings exactly right, make sure I'm playing every note the way they need to be played. But then after that practice session, I'd spend between 2 and 5 hours playing. And again, I had no life in college. It was great. I can't do this anymore. Children do things for time. But anyways, I would just sit and play. And when I say that I play, I mean I'd be doing homework with the ukulele in my lap. I'd be watching TV, playing the ukulele. I'd be eating food, playing the ukulele. Not advised. But I would be doing other things while I played. And this could be considered my sort of noodling time. But because of my concentrated practice, what would happen is as I gained that new experience, I was able to then transfer it into playing. And that is the ultimate goal, is that the things that you practice can eventually become the things you play, because the techniques that you are needed to be acquired have been acquired and then can be used. And it's that process of playing, of noodling, of doing this over and over that I personally find helps your musicianship the most. And when I say musicianship, what do I mean? I mean your sort of your innate ear, your ability to hear good tone and to know how things should be phrased and making a good sound. It's not just what notes you play, which is practice. It's more how you play those notes, which oftentimes is explored in playing. So as a player myself, I think that one of my strengths as a player is my tone, and I completely attribute this to all those hours spent playing and noodling, because that's what allowed me to really develop my own sound, or at least refine the sound that I was working on. So we need both aspects to our playing, because one allows you to acquire new abilities, which is practice, and the other allows you to utilize those abilities, which is playing. A really fantastic arrangement I like for this is one of carpentry. Now, I don't build things myself, but a carpenter is, the whole saying, a carpenter is only as good as their tools, right? And if you think about practicing the ukulele and playing the ukulele as you're a carpenter, well, you can think of practice as getting new tools and learning how to use them, right? If you're a carpenter who only has a hammer, you can't really build much with only a hammer unless you're a really good carpenter, right? But you really can't do much with just a hammer. In the same way that a beginner player can't really noodle or, just play very much. It's because they don't have very many tools to use to build things. So as a person acquires new tools and begins to know how to use them, they can then use those tools to do different jobs. So when you start playing the ukulele, practice enough to acquire some abilities so that then you can use them and play with them, right? So let's say that you just started playing, you've never played before, and you start working on a strum pattern, maybe a scale, and then, the beginning of some sort of song, right? Let's say you acquire those three things. Well, those three things are almost like three tools that now you can take and use once you've gained a familiarity and a proficiency with them, right? And so playing is just playing with all the tools that you've already procured, and while practicing is procuring new tools, right? This is why when you listen to really good players just sit and noodle, it sounds so cool, and then you think, oh, I wish I could do that. I want to do that. Well, all that they're doing is playing with the many, many different tools that they procured over the years, right? So really good noodlers are people who have practiced a lot and are able to then bring that into their noodling. So if we think about this, with the tool analogy a little bit more, if you don't have any tools, you can't just noodle. And this is where people get really discouraged, is they pick up the uke and they can't really just sit and play. It's because they don't have any skills or tools that have been acquired yet. So it tends to be the more beginner of a player, the more they have to practice to develop those skills before they can play. Now, a really common misconception is that you have to master something before you can play it. So you have to practice it until it's mastered and then move to playing. And that's not true at all, because mastered is a very subjective concept, right? Me considering a song mastered is going to be very different than like Jake Shimabukuro considering a song mastered, right? And no matter how much I think I've mastered a song, there are players out there that can play it that much better. And that's the case for everybody, right? Unless you're Jake Shimabukuro. There's always going to be somebody who's mastering it on another level. What I think of is just correct proficiency. So what does that mean? Well, I practice something until I know that I'm playing the right notes, that I'm playing them at the right times, and that I'm playing them the right ways. So that means I'm not playing any wrong notes. That means I'm playing them in the rhythm that they need to be played in the case of a song. And that means I'm using the correct fingering to play them. Because once I have those three things, I can really work on the tone, the emotion behind it, the musicality, and that comes through playing. So once I have enough proficiency over here, I can just kind of loop it and play it again and again. And again, that goes back to how I would practice things. And this came up in one of my private lessons yesterday. We were working on an arrangement of a song called I Will by the Beatles. And with this arrangement, We went through the first 8 bars, and it actually repeats after those 8 bars. But we didn't get to the point where we finish the 8 bars. So the student would be working from the beginning, kind of right to the end, and then would stop and restart. And that makes for good practice, very concentrated. But as we want her to move on to noodling with it or playing it, what happens is she gets all the way to the 8 bars, she gets that repeat and goes back to the beginning to create this sort of loop. And it's really easy to play a loop because you can just do it again and again and again. You can kind of think of it like going out for a jog. It's much easier to do a loop around your house, starting where you live, going around and then coming back, than it is to just run from point A to point B and then you're kind of stuck out here, right? Reminds me of the Fun Run episode of The Office, but I digress. So when we look at this, we want to create loops and opportunities for when we're practicing to be able to then play. Now, how we utilize each of these concepts is making sure that we have enough of each. So we want to be able to practice things that challenge us and push us to use new concepts and materials. And we want our playing to be playing things that are comfortable and that we can utilize, right? So when I'm sitting and playing, my practice is working on things that are just sort of out of my reach, things that are a little bit too difficult so that I can give 100% of my energy and efforts to refining them. But my playing is playing things that I'm comfortable with. And again, not necessarily things that I've mastered, but things that I'm going to be playing well enough to kind of shut off the brain a little bit and be playing around with. Now, one of the most important concepts to all of this is how these two concepts pertain to you. And I'm not talking to the whole YouTube. I'm talking to you right now, the person that's watching this. The reality is that we play the ukulele for kind of one singular reason, and that's because it's fun. It makes us happy, right? Music is a fantastic thing to incorporate all sorts of abilities, and especially for children, it teaches us patience, and it teaches us accountability and perseverance. It teaches us all these concepts that are so important. But most people watching this video are adults that have learned a lot of these concepts elsewhere. And the reality is that while the ukulele can be a source for those skills for you, it's more important that's a source of enjoyment for you, especially during these crazy times we're living in when this video was made in 2020. The ukulele should be a source of fun and enjoyment. And the reality is that challenges to overcome can help lead us to have more enjoyment, right? That's human nature. We need sort of the adversity to overcome to then enjoy something more. But the level in which we need adversity changes from person to person. And we can get so sort of, soaked up in this culture of always needing to get better, always needing to be the best, right? You think about how we approach hobbies. It's like, I got to make it into a living somehow, right? No one just starts jogging. They have to do the marathon and, improve their 5K time. No one just begins knitting. They have to start their Etsy store and figure out how they're going to do that. Every hobby we try to, push to the max. And if you like that, great, keep doing it. But if you don't like that, don't worry about other people's perspectives of what your improvement should be. Only focus on what you are enjoying and helping better your enjoyment out of the instrument, right? So with practice and playing, what I personally find is I like to practice new things that I know I will enjoy playing, right? I look at it from the standpoint of what makes me happy and how can I further that? How can I become more happy while I'm playing the ukulele? Now, it's a little different for me because now I do it for a living, but I think the reason why I've never not enjoyed playing the ukulele, I've never not enjoyed teaching and working with people is because I never lose sight of the reason I'm doing it in the first place, which is it's fun. I enjoy it. And so as sort of an archetype here, I've taught a lot of private lessons. That's what I've been doing for the last decade now, which kind of blows my mind. But I've been teaching one-on-one lessons for a long time. And I've got two main different archetypes of students. One is they love scales, they love chord progressions, they love working on difficult songs, they love pushing themselves really hard. That's what gives them drive and what they love. They love overcoming a new challenge. And then the other type of student is somebody who just really likes playing the ukulele on their porch, likes just relaxing, using the ukulele as a release from the stress of everyday life. Now, person A over here improves very quickly because they're always working on these different techniques. And person B improves less quickly, but person A's tone oftentimes suffers because they spend most of their time practicing. They're trying to always get more comfortable, or excuse me, they're trying to get more adept at playing different things, right? They're trying to play the new song, the harder song. And person B over here, while they're not playing things that are super technically proficient, their tone and their comfort is really good because they spend most of their time playing simple songs that they enjoy to play, while this person is practicing difficult songs that they enjoy to practice. So at the end of the day, this person's doing the crazy instrumental songs and this person's doing something really simple. But the tone of this person is outstanding, while the tone of this person might be lacking a little bit, which is why we want a balance of both, right? To become the best player we need. But here's the kicker. Both of these people are loving the ukulele. They love what they're doing and they're having fun with it. And at the end of the day, that is what is most important, is making sure that you're having fun and that you're getting out of this instrument what you want. So what you need to do is find the balance that works best for you. And a lot of times people have this thought process of, I'm not practicing enough. I'm not getting better enough, faster enough. And to that, I ask the question, why? Who decides that? Are you not getting enough fulfillment? If that's the answer, then yeah, definitely practice more. Try to spend more concentrated effort to improve so that you can have more fun with it. But if your thought process is just, I'm not getting better enough because I'm not getting better enough because other people think I should be getting better, who cares? It doesn't matter. What other people think of your playing does not matter. The goal is to have fun, get enjoyment, and better yourself to have more fun, right? That's it. That's all that matters, especially during these crazy times we're living in. So personally, I spend a majority of my time playing because when I'm doing lessons and other things, I've got the uke in my hands all day and I'm helping people, improve. And when I pick up the uke, I want it to kind of be an escape. And so I just sit and noodle. And you know what's really cool? Because of all the practice that I've done over the last 20 years almost that I've been playing ukulele, I can sit and noodle for a long time using all those different tools that I've procured and building stuff randomly. I could use more practice myself. Absolutely. Sometimes I'll be doing a tutorial for a song and something will be a little challenging. And I'll think, I need to sit and do a session on this of practice. And sure enough, whenever I do that, I've acquired some new skills. It applies to my noodling and makes my noodling a little bit more enjoyable. So I hope that's made some sense. I know I've been rambling here for, like 15 minutes or something straight of practice versus playing, but it's such an important concept. And if you're watching this video live, please start leaving your questions in the chat. I'm going to be getting to all of those soon. In many ways, this lesson is more of a Q&A than anything else to try to help with how you practice versus play. But again, just to sum it up, the differences between practice and playing is practice is the acquiring of new skills and abilities in a very conscious way. Playing is the application and use of those skills and abilities that you already have in a more subconscious way, right? Where you can be doing something else while you're using them. Practice is developing muscle memory and knowing what to do instinctively, while playing is using those things. You can think of it sort of like a toddler learning to walk, right? When a toddler's learning to walk, they're really focused at being able to walk. But once they can walk, they're running around and doing all that stuff. They're not thinking about it anymore because they practice their walking enough to be able to then just use it, right? You can think of it as with any sport, like a golf club, right? Somebody's learning to play golf. They need to focus on their swing and get every little step right. And that's the practice, right? But then you go out and you play golf and that's the playing. And reality is you're not going to improve your game just playing all the time. You have to practice. You have to actually, focus your efforts on getting the correct technique to improve in that way. You can also think of it like training for a sport. There's a reason why they have training camp before, for football, is when you're improving all of your skills and doing all of those drills, it's making you a better player, and then you go play the game and you use all those skills that you've acquired. It's all the same, practice versus playing. So I'm first going to answer some of the questions that are on the forum. For every one of these live lessons that we do here on Rock Class 101, there's a forum post on rockclass101.com, and I answer all those questions. So If you're ever watching this and you're watching a recording and you want your question answered, be sure to leave it in that post. The first question, two questions from Smoke a Lot, good screen name, is says, I have two questions. There's so many techniques, but just so much time, which is obviously an excuse because there's enough time, but not enough focus and patience. Question one, a few days ago, I was wondering if I could practice bar chords and the triplet strum at the same time. Would that be counterproductive? Would I have to be fairly good at one scale before I mix it up with the other? It's a fantastic question. And I would personally suggest the latter, making sure that you get pretty comfortable with one skill before you start to apply the other. The reality is that when you're trying to do too many things at once, you're not allowing your brain to write that information down, right? And so this is a problem with people learning a song, for instance. They'll take a tab and they'll play the whole song all the way through. And by the time they are done with the song, they don't even remember what they played at the beginning because they just read the whole tune. This is something I deal with a lot in private lessons. So instead, we break it down to a smaller part. We work on the first bar or first 4 bars. Maybe it's the first 4 notes. It doesn't really matter as long as it's a small enough piece for the brain to absorb. You work on it again and again and again until you've sort of written it down, so to speak, in your brain, and then you can work on playing it. So in the case of like bar chords and triplet strum, I very much recommend getting comfortable with one before incorporating the other with it. The key word there is comfortable. You don't have to have it mastered. You just have to have the muscle memory and the general idea sort of written in your brain before you want to practice the other one. And then follow up with that. The thought was to put as much technique in the little time I have at the moment. And that's another thing with there's kind of a culture of maximizing time. And the reality is the more you try to do, the less you'll accomplish. Simplify it. Do just 3 bars of a song over and over and over. You'll make a lot more progress, even though it feels counterproductive, working on such a small part. Our brains absorb information much better when we're not trying to do too much. But question 2 would you solely work on one technique until you feel comfortable with it / master it, or rather, how long would you work on one technique before you start another? And so essentially what you want to do is you want to practice a technique until it feels comfortable. So not till you master it. Again, mastering is such a subjective concept, right? What is truly mastering something? The reality is we never master something. We always can improve. So once you are comfortable with it, and what I like to think of is the definition of comfortable is you can noodle with it. So let's take the triplet strum, for instance. If I have to think about the triplet strum at every step, and I'm going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, I'm thinking about where these fingers should go, I'm not comfortable with it yet, right? But if I could pick up my uke and just start doing a triplet strum, and my focus is now on the chord I'm playing, and I can just do the triplet strum, maybe not perfectly, maybe it's still, has a little bit of kinks to work out, but if I don't have to put my conscious thought into the triplet, then you're comfortable with it and you're ready to do something else. So I could put my conscious effort instead into the bar chord and try to work on that, right? So the point that you're comfortable with something is when you can start noodling with it, when you can play it without giving it all of your conscious attention. GM Flynn 8 says, Aloha, I've just signed up rock class barely 1 month ago. So within that context, here are my 2 questions. Relating to practicing. Question, are there techniques for practicing? For example, I continue to struggle with Rainbow Connection Bar 28 and a few other places where you have to transition from one chord to another. Are there ways to practice chord transitions other than repetition? So to answer that question first, which is fantastic, first of all, welcome. The fact that you've only signed up a month ago and you're already working on Rainbow Connection is awesome. When it comes to really difficult transitions in songs, we think that we just need to repeat it over and over and over. And there's some truth to that, but what I find is the most effective is when you've worked on something for a while. So maybe you've spent, a couple weeks or, so practicing something and you're really feeling like you're hitting your head against the wall. And when I say a couple weeks, I mean a couple weeks if you're practicing, 20 to 30 minutes a day. If you're practicing hours a day, then it's only days instead of weeks. But after you've spent several hours working on something, and you just don't feel like you're improving, don't keep working on it for hours. Try to do something else that's similar. This is especially true for adults learning, is us adults are kind of slower learners than kids. Not kind of, we're slower learners than kids. And what we oftentimes need is a different perspective. And so if you're struggling with a transition going up the neck, find another song that has a similar transition and start practicing it. Because what that does is it allows your brain to make another sort of, pathway in the neuron framework or whatever, to allow your fingers to start to find another way to make that transition. Most of the time when I start learning a new song, especially when I was first starting playing, is I get it to a certain level and I feel like I hit a wall. And to get to that next level, I had to work on something else. I had to play a different song that was somewhat similar, but different enough to have me think about things in ways that I wouldn't normally think of it in the first place, right? And this is, the same logic for a lot of different stuff. If you're learning how to cook, don't make the same dish over and over. Make different dishes. Learn the different techniques, because you might cook a dish and think one way, and once you've cooked a different dish, you think, oh, that technique can be used here. It's the same idea with the toolkit, right? With the carpenter and his tools. If you're spending your effort on acquiring new tools, when you have a job, you'll know what tool to use to be able to have that. So that's a really important step. So in this case, for practicing repetition, I would continue practicing Rainbow Connection, but I would also try to find another song that uses a similar transition so that you can create a different way to practice it. And then the relation to noodling question is, how do I transition myself to be able to noodling? I can only play with a music sheet in front of me. Are there ways to transition or train myself to gradually become a noodlinger? Love that word, noodlinger. Yeah, so smaller pieces. So that goes back to what I said a few minutes ago with reading the whole song over and over. Just work on 4 bars. Find a loop. Find something that you can repeat. Work on it with the music, repeat it again and again and again until you can flip the music over and start playing it. And then from there, you can noodle. It's much harder for adults to noodle than it is kids, just because of the way that our brains absorb and process information. So processing smaller amounts of information can help us build more muscle memory, which leads to better noodling. And again, you can't really noodle when you're a complete beginner because you don't have any tools to noodle with, to play with. So you need to develop something to be able to noodle with. But what's cool is, maybe it's only this, a couple things that you end up noodling with. Maybe it's literally just doing something like this. And that's it. Cool. That's fantastic. Whatever it might be, it doesn't really matter as long as you're having fun and you're able to sort of noodle. And you'll notice, oh, I can play with different dynamics and play it softer. I can play it louder. Right? Those techniques come from noodling more so than practice, because you're just sort of playing it, being a musician. So let me go ahead and look in the YouTube chat for some of these questions. So Ricky, Connie, and Marion and Zill all say hi. Hello. Thank you so much for coming. Zill has a question right here, or I think it's a question. I got to read it. Get to the right notes and timing, then move on to something else. It's time to noodle a little more, keep songs alive, work on feel. Yes, absolutely. Work on something to the point where you're comfortable with the noodle. The thing about noodling is it shouldn't feel productive, and that's okay. This goes back to one of the other things I mentioned earlier, right? Where there's this weird culture of we have to be always improving, always doing. No, noodling is about just sitting, having fun, and processing what you're playing in a different way. Instead of being so focused on it, it's just sort of playing it. And you're not going to make improvements quickly while noodling. That's not the point. It's all slow. It's a slow burn with that, but it should be fun. And that's all that really matters. And it does lead to better musicianship. So Zill says, what percentage of time should be played noodling? It varies wildly from person to person. Basically, it's not a matter of percentage. It's a matter of getting the proper practice in before you have noodling. So my general sort of rule of thumb is if you're just playing to have fun, like if the ukulele for you is a release and you want to just enjoy it, and you have, let's say, an hour a day to practice, that's a long time. That's a very long time to practice. I would spend about 20 minutes of that practicing and 40 minutes noodling, right? Now, if at the same time you only have 30 minutes a day, I'd probably do something more like 15 minutes of practice to 15 minutes of noodling. If you only have 15 minutes a day, I'd do 10 minutes of practice and 5 minutes of noodling. And the reason for that is practice is more important than noodling because practice facilitates the noodling, right? If you can't practice anything, there's nothing to noodle with. But if you have a lot of time, a little bit of practice can lead to a lot more noodling. right? That's the key, is you have to practice to be able to noodle. So if you only have a small amount of time, prioritize the practicing so that you can noodle. But if you have a lot of time, it's okay for the noodling to grow. So I personally, again, when I was in college, I probably played an average of 4 hours a day, like average. And I would say that 30-ish minutes of that would be practice and the rest is noodling. And I think that that allowed me to develop the tone that I, like today. So um, Zill also says, how many songs should an early intermediate RC 101 member be able to noodle with? That's a really great question, and it also doesn't matter. Now, what I mean by that is all of these terms, intermediate, beginner, advanced, they're all arbitrary and don't really matter. They don't, right? I've had some students who I would call very advanced players who don't play really difficult songs. I have other players who I would call beginner, or students who I would call beginner players who play more difficult songs. But this person's tone is not very good and they're getting a lot of buzzing, and this person's tone's fantastic and they're playing the song really well, right? It completely depends on your sort of interests. So I would say if you have a song that you can noodle with and that you're having fun with, you're doing something great. I think that overwhelming yourself with too many songs is one of the easiest ways to have problems occur. So don't try to do too much. Do enough that you can do it and have fun with it. And for some people, that's 5 or 6 songs. For others, it's 1 or half, and that's okay. So Marion says, practicing the monthly RC songs help me build new skills. Then I get to record and I lose all my newly acquired skills. LOL, my timing needs help. What's cool about this, and as a whole nother aside here, is when you're learning a new song. So for me, again, I teach private lessons online. That's my primary job and what I just love doing. And a lot of times, especially when people start lessons, is we'll start working on songs. I'm a firm believer in learning songs to learn, because most of my students are adults, and that's how adults learn best, is learning songs that teach techniques and fundamentals and foundation concepts, right? This song gives you these tools. And so a lot of times people learn a song and then a few months later they're learning another song and think, oh my God, I forgot the first song. I've lost everything. No, that's not true. You might have forgotten the song, but those techniques you still learned how to use. So you don't lose the techniques. You ever notice that you learn a song and then you forget it and you come back to it and you're like, oh my God, I can't even remember this. But you start remembering it a lot faster than the first time you learned it. The reason for that is simple. You have the tools, you just have to use them again. And that's where improvement comes, right? People continually improve as they're working on this stuff. It's a process. So don't focus on memorizing every single song you learn. Focus more on the tools that you acquire from practicing it to put into your noodling, right? Marion also says, I'm stuck on Harvest Moon bars 1 and 2. Let me go ahead and pull that open. I'm using a new streaming setup. My phone's mounted behind my computer, which is pretty cool because now I have my computer here instead of what I was doing before. But anyways, I digress. So measures 1 and 2 of Harvest Moon are pretty tricky because there's a lot of movement there, right? So very normal for you to have trouble with that. What I would recommend doing is breaking it down to, instead of bars 1 and 2, break it down to beats 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 of the next song of those bars. So instead of practicing, I think that's how it goes. It's been a while since I played this. Instead, just focus on doing this: 1 and 2 and just that to start. 1 and 2 and do that again and again and again. Spend 5 minutes on it, and then look at the next couple beats, and it goes 3 and 4 and 3 and 4 and if that's tricky, break that down further. 3 and 4 and then do that again and again and again and again. Just those little pieces. Don't worry about moving on till you have that muscle memory written and you've practiced it, and then move on to the next part and just practice that again and again until it's comfortable. People have a struggle with a 2-bar phrase because the other bars are easy and they think it all should be the same level. But the reality is sometimes I spend hours on 4 notes and I spent minutes on 4 bars because those 4 bars were really easy and those 4 notes were really hard, and that's okay. It's totally fine. So I would focus on, smaller pieces. Instead of bars 1 and 2, try just beats 1, 2, 3, 4, beats 1, 2, 3, 4, breaking it down into even smaller pieces. TGVF5 says, this is great information. Thank you, from Tom. Oh, thank you for attending this. Also says, I hope others are noodling like me during this broadcast. Absolutely. I have a problem. So I with these private lessons that I've been teaching for years, I have to have my uke sort of mounted here because the reality is I subconsciously start noodling. When a ukulele is in my hands, I just start playing. Even when I'm listening to somebody, tell me what they're struggling with, or they're playing and I'm noodling, which is very distracting for the student. So that's why I keep it over here. But the reality is, if this thing's in my hand, I'm just kind of playing random things. And it's so important to developing your tone and your comfort. Because if you can talk while you're playing, you're going to be a better player. It makes it easier to sing while you're playing, other things like that. I'm going to put it back over here so I stop noodling. But excellent. TGVF5, got it right this time, says practice facilitates the noodling. Very well said. Thank you. Yeah, it's why good players can noodle so well. It's just they've had more practice. That's really it. Zill says, keep the favorites alive with noodling. I have about 7 or 8 I can reasonably get through, which is a small proportion of what I learned, but maybe it's enough. Whoa, 7 or 8? Fantastic. I mean, I do this for a living, and I have to perform. Sometimes I hate performing. It makes me so nervous. I can't stand it. Anyways, that's a subject for another day. And if you said, how many songs could I play start to finish right now? I don't think I have 7 or 8. Maybe, but I'd have to think about a couple of them before. So 7 or 8 is fantastic. That's a lot. Don't feel like you have to have 7 or 8 if you're watching this. If you have 1 or 2, that can be great too. So Zill also says, I just taken a few days break from Wonderful tonight because I can't memorize the darn thing. Maybe the break will help. Yeah, sometimes arrangements just don't connect as well, and it can be good to practice to get comfortable. Marianne says, thank you for coming. And then Tom again says, I know if I'm enjoying myself noodling, it's time not wasted, rather time well invested. Fantastic quote. Love that. Again, people are so obsessed with improving and constantly improving. And why? If it makes you happy, do it. But don't worry about what other people's perspective is of you. I've had lots of students who I've been teaching as many as 8 years. My longest student I've been teaching 10 years now. 10 years of lessons. Jeez. But I've had students I've taught as many as 8 years whose improvement by an external source of judgment would be, wow, that's not very much improvement in 8 years. But their enjoyment has grown. And that's it. That's all that matters. Honestly, that's the only thing that matters to me. If improving with your playing helps you increase enjoyment, then good. We want to improve. And if just noodling and playing is something that's fun and fulfilling for you, explore that. Let your practice facilitate your enjoyment, right? Not the other way around. Don't make your enjoyment predicated on how fast you improve, because it doesn't matter. Let yourself enjoy what you're playing. And if improving fast is something you enjoy doing and you're good at, great. If it's not, great. It's all okay. So especially during these times, I can't stress it enough. The ukulele should be our therapy to have some enjoyment in life, not a source of stress. So I don't see any other messages in chat. Oh, let me make sure it's on live chat instead of top chat. I don't even know why top chat exists. Zill says, awesome lesson, Matt. Thanks. This is good guidance. In many ways, this is just a big therapy session, right? Where we're talking about it's okay to have fun, to, practice to lead to having more fun. Everybody's different, type A, type B personalities. Some people want the grind and want to practice and want to improve, and that's what makes them, gets them excited. Great. Work on this. Some people are just, I want to play because it's fun and improve to have more fun. Great. Fantastic. My goal for you is for you to have the most fun you possibly can with the ukulele. Sometimes that means hard practice to noodle better. Sometimes that means taking a little bit of a break and just playing around, and both are fantastic. So uke therapy is the best. I agree. So I think I've answered all the questions in chat. Again, if you're watching this and have a question, feel free to ask it now. I'm going to check the forum again just to see if there's any other questions that I missed or anything else. Looks like we're good in there. Now I'm opening the chat. Doesn't look like there are any new questions. So, well, thank you guys so much for attending today's live stream. The difference between practice and playing is such an important thing, both for your development, because they're both critical for you to become the best player you can be, but also just for your mindset of what you get out of the ukulele and what you enjoy, because they both are needed, but some people need more of one or the other depending on their interests, and that's great. So Tom says, I started since the pandemic hit. It's been the best therapy for me altogether, or altogether for me. Yep, I agree. My one-on-one ukulele lessons have become more uke therapy than lessons in some ways since all this hit, because it's nice to just hear somebody else talk. It's crazy times we're living in, and let's use these ukuleles to help us get through it, not add extra stress to the fray. So thank you so much for watching this. Again, if you want to learn more about practicing on Rock Class 101, we have a bunch of different resources for you to use on how to create good practice habits, live streams and other things like that. And it's linked down below in the comments, or in the description below rather. So please check those out. It does look like we have one more question here. Connie says, Ricky wants to ask a question, but it's not letting him type. That's no good. Let's see if we can figure out a way for him to get that that question in there. If somebody can get it in the chat, we'll try to get that. While we're waiting for that, Marianne says, super info, thank you. I'll work the bars beat at a time. Yep, one beat at a time. Don't stress over it. If it takes you 2 weeks to learn 4 beats, welcome to the club. Like, people think that their improvement should be a certain amount, but everyone's different. Everyone struggles in different ways. And so I spent hours and hours working on, half beat phrases, and that's fine. It's really difficult. I remember I was learning a song called Me and Shirley T by Jake Shimabukuro, and the intro goes like this. That took me, I don't even want to admit how many hours that took me, right? And I'd be sitting there just going, and that'd be a whole day's practice session, right? And there's the second days, and then the third and fourth days was that, it took a long, long time. It's easy for it to look like it went fast because now when I play it, it's like a second and a half of music, but that took hours. And that's the reality of learning and learning difficult things, is it takes a lot of time. So, but as long as you enjoy that time, nothing else really matters. Well, I don't see Ricky's question, which is unfortunate. Let me see if I can find it on the Rock Class forum. Let's see if he commented it there. I don't see it there either. Let's see, any on Facebook or anything like that? No, I don't see it there. Oh, it looks like it just came through. Ricky says, I'm devoting practice now to the F sus2 to G5 and Rainbow. It's tough. Yeah, this little here, really difficult. And the reality is, when we're practicing something like that, you want to try to approach it with multiple mindsets. And we talked about this a little bit in some of the practicing episode. But if you're always building it, let's say this, right? Maybe you're going index, middle, pinky, and you're doing that over and over. Try flipping it. Instead, try a pinky first, then try the middle, then try the index. And you'll notice it'll go much slower because you don't have that skill developed yet. And by practicing that, eventually you can jump kind of all three at the same time because you're getting comfortable with it. If you get comfortable leading with the pinky and you also get comfortable leading with the index, what's to stop you from leading with both? And that diminishes the amount of time you're putting in. So whenever you're practicing something, you want to make sure you're getting practice in that sort of sense. Ricky said, should practicing on that be limited to those 2 chords over and over, or the full bar that includes the notes that become before and after? Both. So you want to work on just the small part to help iron it out. That technique that we just talked about of trying to lead with the pinky, for instance, can really help with that. And as you're getting that comfort, go the bar before, bar above, just so that you're giving it perspective. Sometimes when we work on a change with just 2 chords, there's no perspective on it. And when we're playing it in the song, we don't remember because we don't know what came before or after. So make sure that you're working on all of it. First, just focusing on this, getting comfortable with that transition. Again, leading with a different finger can really help. And then from that, you can incorporate the other stuff. So very cool. Well, thank you all for coming to the Saturday morning live Q&A. Lesson, whatever it's called. And thank you so much for the questions. This is one of my favorite concepts to talk about just because it's very near and dear my heart. The ukulele is for fun, people. We're doing this for self-enjoyment. And if you're not enjoying it, you're doing it wrong. So find out what you need to do to enjoy it. And that's most important. So I will see you guys next time. Let me know if you have any questions down in the link below. And have a fantastic weekend. I'll see you guys next week for the next Rock Class 101 live lesson. Or not next week, next month. Take it easy. See you later.